Welcome csc235 class to ex7 random SpongeBob image, and that's exactly what we're going to do with JavaScript, is generate a random SpongeBob image of the 6 characters in SpongeBob, 6 of the main characters: SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, Krabs, and Larry. We're going to use CodePen, and these are images that I have on my website that are actually inside an image folder. So we're going to get these from the web. We're not going to upload them, so we're just going to kind of contact them. And the way we're going to do this is we're actually going to plug in a URL into a div to display the image. And I'll kind of show you a sample here. This is a finished sample. We've also done this in the Intro to Computing class in our JavaScript section. And if you had this before, it's a little bit different. We're doing it different. We're not using conditional statements. We're going to use all random numbers to do this, and we're going to use arrays. So since we just did the fruit arrays, this will kind of lead into this a little bit better. So just to show you the setup here is we have a headline, we have a paragraph, and we have a button. That's about it. And then we also have a div here with nothing in it. And now let me just make sure it's a div. And it is, and it's a div, and it has an ID name called pick. And what's going to happen in this div is we're going to hit this button. It's going to basically call a function or run a function, and it's going to show a random SpongeBob character. So I didn't know what character that was going to be, and it happens to be Larry the Lobster, or in this case, just Larry Lobster. And notice in the end, we're also going to try and coordinate the color of the type that displays the name of the character in somewhat of the same color. So let's do another character. There's Patrick. You can see that's in pink. There's Mr. Krabs, kind of used an orange color. There's Sandy Cheeks, used a brown color because she's a squirrel. There's SpongeBob. There's Sandy again. There's Mr. Krabs. So they're random, so now they won't be in any particular order. Squidward was there, so there's 6 characters, and that's what we're going to do, and that's all we have here. Now this is an H2 down at the bottom. You can see by my code here, it's an H2 with an ID of name. That's so basically we communicate with JavaScript and say, hey, put a name here, and for this div, we're going to say, hey, put a div here by using these IDs, pick and name. So, and we're also going to put these in arrays so we can kind of pull them out and match up the index number of the item in the array with a random number, so it becomes random. And we'll use the same random number so the name matches up with the character. So that's the basic setup. Not a lot of HTML, and certainly not a lot of CSS, although we can add more because this is very vanilla. We could maybe try a Google font, maybe try to make it look a little bit nicer, even adjust the buttons a little bit. Now the last part of this is the fact that a reset button shows up, because then you could reset it back to nothing again. So you could even control showing and hiding the button here. So there'll be a couple things we'll have to do. So it's a nice little exercise that'll cover a couple different subjects, including variables and arrays in JavaScript. So here's the instructions. And what we're going to do is do our HTML first in our panel. So I'm going to go here. I already started up kind of a new pen, and I'm going to give it a name right away, and I'll just call it ex7, and I'll just call it rand image. And after I save it, I'm going to add it to my 235 collection. I have one right here. And then I'll be ready to go. I have it all saved. I have it in a collection. And I'm going to start off with my HTML first, and we're going to mess around with Emmet a little bit to kind of help us write HTML. And that's that kind of shortcut that kind of helps us write our tags and elements. And if I haven't done that before, I'll show you what's going to happen. Now, let's just take a look at the instructions. We're going to have a body, H1, P, and we're going to have a button, and then we're going to have a div, and then we're going to have a name. Now, everything is inside the body tag. So the H1, the P, the button, the div, the H2, they're all children of the body tag. So that'll help us when we write our shortcuts with Emmet. I'll show you how to do that if we haven't. I'm going to start off with body, and then I'm going to use kind of the child symbol, which is that greater than sign. Now in there, we're going to have an H1. Now I'm not going to put any text in the H1 yet, so I'll just let it empty. But that would say something like, you know, random SpongeBob character. And then after that, since it's a child, we're going to use the plus sign. And for there, I'm going to have a paragraph. And I'm not going to put the paragraph text in yet, so I'll just put P and I'll just hit plus. And then after the paragraph, we're going to have a button. So I'm going to put a button element, and I'll just say button. And I don't really need an ID for it yet. But I could do this. I could put curly brackets, and I could put display image. I'll just put a little label on it, and I'll do that in curly brackets. That'll actually put text in between the button tags for our elements, so I'll do that. And then the last thing we'll have here is I'll do a plus sign, and we're going to have a div, so I'll put div, and I'll use the pound sign because we're using an ID, and I'll give it an ID of pick. And then after that, I'll do a plus sign again, and I'll do an h2, also with an ID, and that'll be an ID of name, because we're going to do the character name. So I guess we could call it name. Let me just check this one. Yeah, we called it name, so that's fine. We could call it name. And then what we do with this emit, this shortcut, we just hit the tab key, and it writes our HTML for us. Now, I didn't put the headline in, so I'm going to just put, and then in the paragraph, we'll just put our instructions, and I put character, and that's about right. And I'm not going to do anything else with my image right now. Now notice we don't see anything for our pick, we don't see anything for our name because we have nothing in there yet. And that's okay, we don't have to have anything in there yet. So that's all we need for our HTML to start. So we're pretty good with that unless you want to put any margin or anything on that. So I'm just going to start with that, and then we'll get started. And I'll even cover this up, and I'll make sure I save. And I'll cover this up. I'm not going to do any CSS yet until we start worrying about our image. So I'm going to start working on our JavaScript. So I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. So next with our JavaScript, we're going to need a bunch of variables. We're actually going to need 6 of them. And here they are right here. And you could even copy it off the instructions if you want to. That may make things a little bit easier. I'm actually going to copy just this. Actually off the PDF. I'm going to copy just the first one, just the URL. So I'll do Control-C or Command-C just to copy that address. And then I'll go back here, and I'll start off my variable. I'll say var. And then I'm actually going to do an image source tag. And so I'm actually going to do, and this whole thing is actually going to be a string. So I'm going to put double quotes here, and then I'm inside here, I'm going to do image src equals, and now I'm going to use single quotes. Just going to use single quotes, and I'll put 2 of them, and then I'll close up my tag. So this is an image source tag inside of quotes, because in order to transfer it into HTML, we're going to treat it as a string. That's why there's quotes around the tag itself. So we're going to be plugging an image source tag inside here. So inside our div is going to be an image source tag. So in order to transfer that, we're going to make sure we transfer it kind of as a string, so it just gets kind of thrown in there. So it's going to be in whatever's inside the quotes, including these brackets, which is part of the tag, is going to get put in the div. So we're going to use that. Now, if you're using double quotes on the outside, you should use single quotes on the inside, or vice versa, or use a single quote on the outside and double quotes on the inside. I started off like that, so I'm going to use single quotes in here, and this is where I'm going to paste the URL. So I'll paste it in there, the full URL, and make sure you have it okay. And I could even put a semicolon at the end. And what I didn't do here was give it a name. I just said var equals. It should be var, and I'll call it SpongeBob. And I'll keep everything lowercase just to be consistent. I'll make all my variables lowercase, no capital B's in here for Bob or anything like that. So that's one of my variables. Now once I have this, and you want to make sure everything's okay, you have the double quotes and single quotes, it'll be easy to copy this 6 times. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy it, well, 5 more times. And then you're going to update the characters, and you're going to do them in the order that we have them on the sheet. So I'll paste them all. So I have 6. Now I have 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this, and then I could hold Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and highlight this. And then I could actually type in Patrick. I could do that all at one time, or you could copy and paste however you want to do that. And then after Patrick is going to be Squidward, so I'll double click here, hold Control or hold Command, and double click here, and then at the same time I could type in Squidward, and it'll replace that text that I have highlighted in 2 places. So that saves time a little bit, and I'll do that with Sandy. I'll double click here and then hold Control or Command, and double click here and do Krabs, and then I have Larry. So I have my 6 variables. Now let me just check my instructions, see if that looks okay. Larry, Krabs, Sandy, Squidward, Patrick, and SpongeBob. So I have them all in the right order. And now what we're also going to do is we're going to create an array and put those same variables in an array. So we're going to have a list of these variables. So that's not that hard to do. So I'm going to put a space between them, and I'm going to say var, and I'm just going to call my array images. And then remember, when we make an array, we use the square brackets, and I'm just going to copy and paste, copy and paste. And then I'll put a comma space. So now I have an array of these variables which represent images. So whenever I want to plug in an image, I don't have to use this whole long URL, because that would just make our statements really long and break lines and just make it hard to look at and hard to find errors. So now when we use inner HTML to show an image, instead of using the URL, we could just use the variable. Now this array is going to be used for, now you might be saying, well, why do we need an array? The array is going to be used because we're going to use a random number. We're going to generate a random number from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. We're going to generate a random number from here, and that'll help us display which image will go in there, because we don't just want to display one image. We're not just going to click like a Sandy button and click Sandy. Then we wouldn't need this. We're going to use a random number. So in our function, we're going to generate a random number and then kind of pull we're going to use our index number of our array from here to kind of choose which image is going to display. Now, to keep with our instructions, which basically says to make an array of names, we're going to do that next because we want to pull names to display. Let's do that before we do anything else. So this is going to be another array. So I'll just say var, and it'll be called names. And I'll say equals. And what I'm going to do is actually just copy this array. And there may be different ways to do it, or you could just type it. But I'm just going to copy it, or you could copy it. Oh no, I think I have a screenshot on the thing. What I'm going to do here is we're going to make a name. So I'm just going to fix these, and I'll go in here, and I'll put last names, and do all that kind of stuff. And this is going to be Patrick Star. So we're going to set these up just like names. Now I'm not even putting the quotes on. I'll do the quotes after. Now that I have those, I'm going to highlight each name, first and last name. And I'm going to do shift double quotes, and I'll highlight this and do shift double quotes. And I'm getting a little error until I'm done here. And I'll do shift double quotes. And so for each name, I'm going to highlight and add the quotes after the fact. That's just easier. And now I'm going to highlight that. And now I have my array done. So I have an array of variables without quotes. And now I have an array of names with quotes. These are the names that are going to show up in the H2. And these are the images that are going to show up in our div. So we'll have two separate things, but notice they are in the same order. I want to keep them in the same order when we do that. So this is called images, this is called names. And what we're going to do next is create our variables so that we can display a random image. So the next thing we're going to do is create a function. So I'll just hit double return, and I'll use the keyword function. And I'll call it displayImage. You could call it showImage. Whatever you like, showImage, displayImage. Put your double parentheses, and then also you're going to put your curly brackets and hit return, and this will be ready to start typing your function inside of. So what we're going to do here is we're going to generate a random number, and we're going to generate the variable for a random number inside the function. The reason we're doing it inside the function is so when we click on the button, it generates a new random number each time. Otherwise, if we generated a random number outside of the function, it would be the same. It would kind of just generate one character and it wouldn't change each time. So we want to make sure it changes each time we click the button. So what we're going to have to do is just call a var rn equals random number, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do math.random, and remember it's lowercase random, capital M, and there's a parentheses. You need a parentheses, and that generates a random number from 0 to 1, not including 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply it by the number of characters up here. We're going to multiply it by 6. So that gives us a number from 0 point something something to 5 point something something something, but not including 6. So, but we are going to use the 6 there, because what we're going to actually do is round it down so that we have 0 through 5, because we have 6. The length of our array is 6. There's 6 elements in our array, or 6 whatever data objects in our array. But in terms of index number, remember this one's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to generate random numbers from 0 through 5, and that's how we're going to pull out which image displays. So let me put a semicolon here. Now, the last thing we want to do here on this math random is use another math method. So we'll just use rn. We don't have to declare rn again. We're just kind of reassigning it with the equal sign. And we're going to say math.floor. And this is a rounding down number. Let me just delete this for a second. Let me just show you something. If I'm going to copy this, and And I'm going to put it outside of here, just for now. And then this is, you don't have to do this. I just want to show you something. And what I'm going to do is after this, I'm just going to put, and I'm taking it out of my function to do this. I'm going to put console.log, and in parentheses, I'm going to put rn. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can basically generate with the console a random number. And there it is. There's a couple here. And I think you could do Shift Command 5 to generate a new one. 4.2, 0.1. Now, I don't know how long I'll have to do this to see what we go up to, but basically, it will not go up to 6. It will only go up to like 5.999 as a very, and I could keep doing this and I may not get close to it, but trust me, it'll basically go from 0 point something, because I think one of these had 0.1, but it doesn't go down completely to 0, but it doesn't go up completely to 6 either. So what we're going to do is these numbers that we're going, and plus we also do not want all these decimal places. I mean, we don't want that. What we want to do is round down. So if I'll even do this outside the function. If I do rn, and that's what I was going to do, if I do rn equals math dot floor, it's going to round down. Now, just for example, if I did ceil, I'll just show you ceil, and I put rn in there, and I console log. What's happening here, you can see it's doing 4, 5, 5. It should eventually have a 6, and there I have a 1. Okay, and you see that I got a 6. So it goes from 1 to 6 when you round up. If I round down and I do floor, that rounds down, and it's going to round down 0 to 5. And if I tried this again, I don't know how many times I want to try this. There's a 3, there's a 0. So now I know I'm getting a 0, and trust me, it'll go up to 5. I don't have to keep doing it to do that. So it's going to round down now. So that's what I want to use. So I'm going to actually just copy this. So I just did it outside of the function, because if you have it in the function, it won't generate in the console. So I'll close that up, and I'm just testing it out. And again, floor rounds down, so it's going to basically go from 0 to 5, and there's going to be no decimal places there. So let me get rid of this console and that's going to be inside the function. So now I'm generating, when I click the button, and I didn't put my on-click on, but basically I'm going to click the button to generate a random number. Now the random number isn't doing anything yet. What we do want to do is we want to do something where we display something on our page. So we're going to display something on our page. So I'm going to do document.get element, and we want to target the proper ID. The proper ID is going to be the one we called pick. There it is. It's div ID, and its name is pick. Now when we target it with JavaScript, we still have to put it in quotes. So we're going to do pick, because remember with CSS we target it with a pound sign, but we're going to say pick, and we're going to use inner HTML, and that's going to write it to the page. And what it's going to do is going to write the tag into the HTML so it shows an image. And now instead of putting the whole URL, what we're going to do here is we're just going to put the array name, which is images. And inside the image, we're going to put the square block. And remember, this is the index number. So remember, if it was 0, it would be SpongeBob. If it was 1, it would be Patrick. If it was 2, it would be Squidward, and so on. But we're going to put in rn. That means it's going to be a random number from 0 through 5. That means it's going to be any of those numbers. So I'm just going to put that in a semicolon, and that should generate our image. And if you just want to see if it works, you could go right after here and just basically call the function. Just write the function, and there it is. And it did 2 in a row there, because I guess it just kind of ran twice. So it's running the function here. When you do that, I could keep making it run by doing Shift Command 5. Now, I didn't put the name yet, so this is just calling the function. And it's just calling it in the JavaScript. We're not calling it with a button. We actually do want to call it with a button. So what I'll do here is I'll cut this and get rid of that semicolon there, and I'll go back up to my HTML, and I'll put it in my button. Now, my button is going to have an on-click equals and in quotes, so make sure you put that first. Make sure you keep the equals too, and then paste in the function, and the function will have the parentheses, and it will be in quotes, and it has to be the same, has to be a capital I, all that kind of stuff. So I'll put that in there, and now what should happen is the button should basically run that function or call that function. So let me save this, and I'll hit display image, and there's my random image showing up. So we're halfway there as far as what we have to do. We have our image displayed, so we got our JavaScript working. That wasn't that hard. Not a lot of code here, but that works. And what I'll do is I'll take a break here, and then we'll do our H2 image, and we'll do some coloring, we'll resize our image a little bit, and then also do a reset button. So I'll do that in part 2. So we'll stop here with part 1 of our random SpongeBob image.